If it's Wednesday, President Biden's crackdown on asylum claims at the southern border goes into effect and immediately faces legal and political pushback, with some Biden allies bashing it as an attempt to, quote, out-Republican the Republicans. Plus, Hunter Biden's ex-wife and his ex-girlfriend take the stand in his criminal gun trial, testifying in detail about the president's son's drug addiction as First Lady Jill Biden watches from inside the courtroom. And a suspect is in custody. An investigation is underway after a gunman opened fire at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, as Israel warns it's prepared for, quote, intense action, and amid a rise in violent clashes with Hezbollah militants. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Gabe Gutierrez in Washington, where we're tracking the political and legal fallout from the Biden administration's executive action, which went into effect at midnight, that will stop asylum claims from nearly all migrants who entered the United States illegally between ports of entry. We start with the political backlash, which the president is facing from both sides of the aisle. As we noted yesterday, Republicans are bashing the action as too weak. But the president also faces pressure from progressive Democrats who say the executive action mirrors the restrictions that Donald Trump tried to enact during his presidency.
What we see today is a disappointment. And from what we know, it's not going to make the situation at the border materially better.
It is a step in the wrong direction, and unfortunately, as a longtime immigrant rights activist who has spent now 20 years on the streets fighting for humane immigration reform, we are making the same mistake again that Democrats continually make when we try to out-Republican the Republicans.
The White House has rebuffed claims their action is similar to Trump-era policies, specifically pointing to exceptions in the asylum ban, including for unaccompanied minors. Here's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan earlier today.
There's a major difference between what the president has done and what his predecessor did. His policy does not separate families, does not put kids in cages, does not ban people on the basis of religion, as President Trump did. And critically, it does not shut down asylum. What it does is say that if you come across the border illegally, you are barred from making an asylum claim. There are still lawful pathways to make asylum claims in this country in an orderly and humane way.
But the divide among Democrats comes as polls show a dim outlook for the president on the issue. Voters list immigration and the border as the second most important issue facing the country, just barely behind inflation and the cost of living. But more than 2/3 of voters disapprove of President Biden's handling of border security so far in his term, including 1/3 of Democrats. And it's not just progressive lawmakers and voters. The Biden administration is also preparing for legal challenges from the ACLU, which has already announced its intention to sue. This was the group's chief political and advocacy officer yesterday.
The ACLU, along with our partners at the National Immigrant Justice Center and the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies, will go to court to block this illegal and harmful ban on asylum. It was illegal when Trump did it, and it is no less illegal today. Today's set of executive actions are not solutions, and we are here to say, we'll see you in court.
We'll talk to an attorney for the ACLU in just a moment, but joining me now near San Diego is NBC's David Noriega, and my White House colleague, Monica Alba, joins me here on set. Thank you both for joining us. David, I want to start with you. What are you seeing on the ground, and has anything changed since this went into effect?
Gabe, the short answer is no, nothing has visibly and immediately changed. Let me use where I am right now as an example. I'm on a spot on the border between San Diego and Tijuana, where Border Patrol directs migrants to wait before they get picked up and processed. Over the course of today, we've actually seen an uptick in the number who crossed compared to yesterday. There's actually a small group of folks from Somalia who just crossed the border in the last few minutes. They're now sitting on the other side of that fence, waiting to be picked up by Border Patrol and processed. What this shows you This is critically important, Gabe. When people talk about this executive action shutting down or even sealing the border, it doesn't exactly describe the reality on the ground, because the truth is when migrants set foot on American soil, they cannot just be summarily expelled back to Mexico unless Mexico agrees to that, which they haven't. So people from countries like Somalia, basically any country that isn't Mexico, still have to be picked up by the Border Patrol, processed, and put into removal proceedings. The difference is that folks like the ones we just saw cannot any longer, as of today, have access to asylum claims. They still have to go through regular deportation proceedings, and the United States only has the capacity to deport en masse and quickly people from Mexico and northern Central America. For everybody else, it's still going to take time. There are still choke points. There are still resource constraints. It's going to take time for this to play out and for us to see the real material consequences that this is going to have on the border. Of course, it is politically and legally very momentous. In terms of how it plays out on the ground, it's still, to be quite honest, Gabe, pretty uncertain.
David Noriega live for us in California at the border there. Thank you, David, for your reporting. I want to turn now to Monica Alba, White House correspondent. Monica, thanks for being here on set. And as we alluded to earlier, the president is facing a lot of pushback from progressive. What is the White House's plan to prevent this from turning ugly with progressives?
Well, they knew there was going to be this kind of pushback. And even when they were trying to craft this portion of the temporary authority to shut down the border, back when it was going to be a part of the legislation on Capitol Hill, which is what they all preferred, they were getting real-time pushback from some of those lawmakers who were saying, this is not humane, we shouldn't be proceeding this way. You, as a candidate, Joe Biden, promised to do things differently. So were already very aware of this. And what they're essentially saying is that the facts on the ground changed their opinion and their stance. And the president even admits that this is not what he would have wanted to do, but he says that he feels he's forced to do it because inaction was not an option. So they're going to continue to message what the president said yesterday, which in their view is patience, that this needs to take a little bit of time. And they claim he's going to lay out some new things that they argue could make the immigration system fairer and better. And they're pointing to that as something to look ahead to.
Yeah, so potentially more executive action on the way. Now, how is this different from what Donald Trump did in 2018? Certainly the White House is already getting some questions about that. How are they responding?
And it's not that different. Really, this is fairly similar in terms of the authority that they're citing to try to do this from the previous administration. But what they're saying on the totality of the president and the White House's approach to immigration is that, of course, they're completely different aspects in terms of how they talk about migrants, how they talk overall about the right to pursue asylum and seek a better opportunity, and to do that through the legal pathways versus Donald Trump, who has spoken about immigrants poisoning the blood of our country and making comments like that. So they say that overall that needs to be taken into context. But in terms of the differences, it's just a couple of humanitarian carve-outs for unaccompanied minors and also for victims of human trafficking that do set it apart from what the Trump administration attempted to do.
And Monica, look, the White House has said that political considerations didn't factor into this executive action. But the wider context is look, the 2024 election is not too far away. Immigration, certainly a top issue. And polls are showing that the the majority of voters don't think very highly of President Biden when it comes to the border. Does the White House think this executive action, and does his campaign, do they think this executive action might help shore up that political vulnerability?
They think it's possible, and they do concede that this is a political vulnerability, and they do argue that that's not what is driving this policy entirely, but you cannot divorce the two from each other. The White House argues that there are voters out there, of course, who cite that they would like to see the president be tougher. He says that Democrats made a ton of concessions in what would have been the legislation, and that the president has made those concessions as well, because that is what is necessary, and that is what he has heard from Democratic governors and Democratic mayors who are dealing with the influx of migrants in some of these cities. So the president and the White House are always saying that it's their own allies who are saying there's more we need to do when it comes to the border, and that's why they decided to go ahead with this now.
Yeah, certainly over the last several months, they really have been trying to have stronger messaging, trying to flip the issue on Republicans. Monica Alba, our White House correspondent and colleague, thank you so much for being here. And now I want to turn now to Lee Gallant, an attorney with the ACLU and deputy director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Program. project. Lee, we've spoken many times before, and I know you have argued these lawsuits during the Trump administration as well. The ACLU has already said it will sue the White House over this new executive action. So I know you said yesterday that you intended to do it. Do you have any news in terms of when that might be filed and where?
No, we're still trying to figure that out. We're carefully reviewing the order and going to decide the timing and the place for the action, but I think it'll be soon. I think we're going to see real grades falling on the ground fairly soon when people with serious asylum claims get sent back to danger, including families. And I want to just make this more general point. We are not here to say President Biden is President Trump. President Biden has not engaged in a family separation policy. He has not talked about immigrants in a dehumanizing way. But I do think, as your reporting has shown, this particular policy is the same as what we successfully challenged under President Trump, with those very minor exceptions that really aren't legally relevant. That's why we feel like we have no choice back to court.
So, Lee, let's drill down on that a little bit. What specific aspects of this executive action is the ACLU planning on challenging?
So the primary piece is that people will not be screened for asylum if they enter between ports. And Congress has been very clear that you are allowed to apply for asylum whether or not you enter a port. And the reasons are straightforward and consistent with what the rest of the world does. Many people can't get to a port. They don't know where the port is. Cartels push them across the border between ports. They may be hundreds of miles away traveling with a little child. So what Congress has said for the last 4 decades and what the courts have said is, if you get on U.S. soil, you're not necessarily guaranteed asylum, but we will at least screen you. And the administration's point that there's going to be some openings at the ports, well, they're going to be very limited. You need technology to make an appointment. It takes months while you're waiting in danger. So that's not really any solace for most people. The overwhelming number of people are going to be turned back. So what we are saying in a nutshell is the executive branch has exceeded the authority given to them by Congress. And I think the administration is fairly clear on knowing that they're on shaky legal ground. They have acknowledged there's going to be lawsuits and maybe they can't do this without congressional action.
And Lee, as we just heard Monica report, the White House is saying that this is different from Trump-era policies because of those humanitarian carve-outs. Do you buy that?
No, I don't buy it. I mean, we're all for humanitarian carve-outs, but they're extremely limited and they'll be of no help to most people. We also think that while we're in favor of a carve-out for unaccompanied minors, it's going to actually create self-separation among families. Parents are going to be in that cruel decision. Do I send my little child across by themselves to get to safety, or do I keep the family together? So it's going to force separation in a lot of ways. I think the American public has said immigration is important to them, but I think they want a balanced approach. And I think what they'd want to see is a more streamlined process, less chaos, but still have a process. And right now, under this order, if you come to the country in the wrong place for no fault of your own, even if you are being persecuted because of your religion and it would be in grave danger of sent back, you will not even get an asylum screening. I think there has to be some middle ground where people are at least screened. We also need to, frankly, open more legal pathways for workers. Every single economist in the country is saying we need more workers, especially immigrant workers, that they can fill those gaps employers wanted. If we had more legal pathways, we wouldn't have as many people coming to the border. And if we put more asylum officers at the border, those people that did come could be quickly screened. Many people will not make out a claim and they'll be sent back, and that's unfortunate. And those that do will be able to come in. But right now, we're not even going to be screening most people, no matter how serious their claim is and how much danger they're in. And that's a real sea change from the existing law.
So, Lee, the Biden administration is acknowledging that there will be problems to implementing this. They have been asking Congress to act and provide more funding for, immigration agents, for immigration judges as well. But I want to ask you about, what happens to some of these migrants when they're sent back to their home countries. Of course, it's easier said than done to send them back to some countries. I know Mexico has agreed to take, I believe it's up to 30,000 a month from select countries. But, what about some countries in Africa? What about China? I know the administration says they're in negotiations with Beijing to bring back some, or to deport some of the migrants back to China. But what about some of the countries that we can't easily just fly them back to their home countries? What happens to those migrants?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't know whether they're going to be forced upon Mexico, whether they're going to languish in detention centers. It's extremely unclear how this is going to work. I mean, ultimately, Congress does need to provide more resources. And what we think is that there's less need for enforcement resources. Most of these asylum seekers are not trying to evade law enforcement. They walk across the border and they sit down and wait for someone to approach them so they can say, I'd like to apply for asylum under your laws. And so what we need is Congress to appropriate more resources for more asylum officers so we can move things quickly so people won't languish if they don't have a legitimate claim. But where people are going to go for countries that won't take them back, I think that's a fair question.
And Lee Gallant from the ACLU, thank you so much for joining us and your expertise. And joining me now here on set for the political side of all this is NBC News chief political analyst Chuck Todd. Now, Chuck, I've been talking to you about immigration for now a number of years, and I want you to put this in perspective. You know, a couple of years ago, Democrats really didn't want to talk about immigration. This was up until just a few months ago. So talk to us about how dramatic a shift this is for the Biden administration and for more generally Democrats heading into this election.
Well, certainly if you compare to how Joe Biden campaigned in 2020 on this issue versus today, it's a real, it's a really sort of, it can feel a bit whiplashy. You know, the thing that sort of, that I don't get is why they waited 6 weeks. This was something they clearly said they were going to do when the Senate vote failed. Right. They went through the sort of the charade of the Mayorkas impeachment that House Republicans created. There were all these other opportunities to do this. They knew what they were going to do. And obviously, they've been worried about the reason I want to talk about it is because they know the politics is it just divides the party. Half the party views it as one issue, and the other half of the party looks at it and sees the polls and says, "Hey, swing voters don't like this mess right now at the border."
Look, some of the sources I've been talking to, the reason they waited, they say, is, look, they had to, look at a legal analysis of this because, as you see, they're, doing backflips to try to differentiate this from the Trump era.
I'm going to be really cynical here. The whole point was, is get caught trying. And if it doesn't meet the courts, then you were right. You tried to do it. It's this, by doing it the way they did it, they ended up not getting the credit from the folks who wanted to see them get tougher. At the same time, they ended up making those that are advocates for a different policy angrier about it.
And another factor was, the Mexican elections. The new president, they haven't had the best relationship always with AMLO.
Okay.
New president,
but
they
it was going to be the same
cooperation.
party. It was going to be the same party. All of this is excuse making. It's sort of like by waiting. I was talking with somebody else very close to this White House, wondering the same thing. Like, this could have been done. The timing of it, they did it in a way to get minimum political gain from it. And in fact, and actually maximum political pain.
So I've talked to you about this next issue. And that is what Greg Abbott did, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, busing migrants to Democrat-led cities. It was viewed as a political stunt by some, but Mayor of New York, Mayor of Chicago, Mayor of Denver, the governors of several states really then started, looking at this issue in a different way because it wasn't just border towns now. And I know you've made the point before, political stunt aside, did that tactic work? And 100%. is that partly responsible for why we're here right now with the administration?
I think 100% that tactic worked. This was the point Abbott was trying to make. Look, I still don't understand why President Biden and Greg Abbott haven't sat down and sort of at least made an attempt. I'm talking.
Is that good for Greg Abbott, though?
I'm talking about 2 years ago when he was first starting to do this, like where you at least make the attempt to say, hey, let's take the political side, because it looked like a political stunt. But the point Abbott was trying to make is, hey, if folks that aren't in Texas had to deal with what we were having to deal with, they might have a different attitude. Well, turns out they were right. We've seen Mayor Adams, you've seen Governor Pritzker, Governor Polis in Denver, and the mayor of Denver. They've all, I do believe they put this pressure on the federal government. And what Abbott would say is, they weren't listening to me. Maybe they'll listen when Democratic mayors complain. And you know what? And that score, he was right, because now they've changed tactics.
And Chuck, I want to turn now to your column this week, because it is Wednesday. So I want to read part of it right here. In your column, you write, when candidates are unpopular, particularly incumbents, there are two basic paths to fixing the problem. Path one is make the campaign a choice, not a referendum, and do your best to make your opponent more of a focal point in the campaign. Path two improve your own positives and convince voters that their initial judgment of you was wrong. Is that what President Biden needs to do on immigration? Is that what he's trying to do?
Look, I think he is trying to be where voters are, right? These voters in the middle. Look, we all see the polls. The most important issue facing the country, it's either cost of living or immigration, one or two, right? When you see this on there. Look, they clearly have chosen path one. But the reason I question this right now is I think, I keep asking myself, why is the verdict not having the desired impact, perhaps, that the Biden campaign? And it says, well, perhaps if voters had a better view of Biden, they might have a harsher view of Trump due to this verdict. But right now, they're questioning whether Biden's up to this job. And so I know all of the conventional political wisdom says, no, make it a referendum Trump, make it a referendum Trump. Well, Hillary Clinton tried that, and it didn't work. If your negatives are as bad as the candidate you're running against, you're not going to get the traction you think you're going to get. I think they've got to figure out how to improve his positives. The things that would do that, town halls, things like this, it's clear this White House is hesitant to put the president out there with the people more. But I think if they did, there's a chance to. He had net positive ratings going into 2020. That's why he won that election. Right now, his ratings look more like Hillary Clinton's in 2016 than they do Joe Biden's in 2020.
Chuck Todd, always a pleasure having you here, sir.
Thanks, Dave.
Talk soon. All right, coming up, Hunter Biden's ex-wife and ex-lover take the stand on day 3 of his criminal gun trial. We're live outside the courthouse with the very latest next. Plus, Israel says it's prepared to launch a new offensive at the Lebanon border as the U.S. Embassy foils an armed attack. We'll get a live report from Jerusalem straight ahead. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. Testimony resumed for day 3 of Hunter Biden's criminal gun trial in Wilmington, Delaware. The president's son is facing 3 charges tied to the purchase and possession of a gun while allegedly using narcotics. The defense, however, is disputing the claim that Hunter Biden knowingly lied about his drug use when filling out federal background check forms. Today, some high-profile witnesses took the stand, including Hunter Biden's ex-wife and his ex-girlfriend, who both spoke about their relationship with the president's son and provided unflattering details about his addiction to crack cocaine. Joining me now from outside the courthouse in Delaware is NBC's Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And Ken, take us inside the room. What did we hear from today's witnesses?
Yeah, Gabe, it was an eventful and surreal day in court today as these 2 women described Hunter Biden's descent into the depths of drug addiction. First, his wife of 24 years, Kathleen Buell, talking about how she first discovered in 2015 a crack pipe in their Washington, D.C. home, and that's when she knew and Hunter Biden acknowledged that he was smoking crack. And then she described how that drug addiction resulted in the end of their marriage. They divorced in 2017. And then another witness, Zoe Keston, a woman who became involved with Hunter Biden after he met her at a strip club, testified that by the time they were together, Hunter Biden was smoking crack at times every 20 minutes, and that much of his life was devoted to trying to find and acquire crack cocaine and withdraw money and spend large sums of cash on those drugs. And the purpose of this testimony was for prosecutors to paint a picture for the jury that in the months and weeks leading up to the purchase of that handgun, Hunter Biden was addicted to drugs. He said he wasn't when he filled out the form, and that's the heart of this case, Gabe.
You know, Ken, that testimony today must have been difficult to hear for those close to Hunter Biden. How did the First Lady react?
She was impassive, intently watching and listening. You know, she was in the courtroom yesterday for also some harrowing testimony, and it may be that, you know, she's become accustomed now to how difficult this is going to be, and so, you know, she didn't have any visible emotional reaction, but this has got to be really horrific for the people close to Hunter Biden, even though they've known this and he's written about it in his book, to hear it in such graphic terms in a court of law, knowing that the public is also learning of these details, it's got to be really tough, Gabe.
You know, Ken, earlier we were expecting a trial to last about 1 to 2 weeks, perhaps. Are we still on track for that?
It's certainly moving perhaps more rapidly than we had expected. There were 4 witnesses in total on the stand today. The prosecution is motoring through its case. The judge is moving things along. So it could finish up sooner than perhaps we thought. But it seems likely that it nonetheless will go through this week and perhaps into early next week, Gabe.
Ken Delanian, live for us in Delaware. Ken, thank you. And turning now to the ongoing tensions on Capitol Hill over Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's anticipated address to Congress. Netanyahu's visit comes as Democrats grow increasingly concerned that the address could further divide their caucus. Speaking to our Ali Vitali, Senator Bernie Sanders said he will boycott the speech, citing concerns over Netanyahu's handling of the war and the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Children have already starved to death. Thousands are dealing with severe malnutrition right now. The situation will get worse. And if Speaker Johnson thinks that we should reward the leader of that effort, Mr. Netanyahu, by inviting him here for a joint session of Congress, I have strong disagreements.
Meanwhile, on the ground, Netanyahu met today with Israeli troops defending their northern border with Lebanon, where he said troops there are prepared for, quote, very intense action in the north. And concerns about a potential escalation in the region are growing once again today after a gunman opened fire at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. You can hear in this video gunshots in the vicinity of the embassy. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said one guard was injured in that attack, and that the guard was receiving care. I want to turn now to NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez. He's live for us in Jerusalem. Raf, what else do we know about the incident?
So, Gabe, the shooter is a Syrian national, that's according to Lebanese authorities. And while we don't know his exact motivation at this point, the State Department is saying that he appeared to have ISIS markings on the tactical vest he was wearing when he opened fire outside the U.S. Embassy in Beirut at around 8:30 local time this morning. That gun battle between the shooter and Lebanese forces going on for about half an hour before he was eventually shot, wounded, and taken into custody. Lebanon says that they have arrested 5 other people in raids all across the country. As you mentioned, a local Lebanese security guard was seriously wounded. That's according to the State Department. And all U.S. embassy staff are safe and accounted for. But, Gabe, this revives painful memories of the 1983 suicide bombing at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, killed more than 60 people. And, in fact, the current embassy is outside the center of the city in a mountainous area, heavily fortified, for exactly the reason that they are so concerned about attacks like this.
And, Raf, we've all been focused on the situation in Gaza and around Rafah, but what's the latest on the tensions along the border of Israel and Lebanon to the north?
Well, they are heating up. There has been fighting between Israeli forces and Iranian-backed Hezbollah militants since October 7th. Just earlier today, Hezbollah fired 2 explosive drones into Israel. At least 11 Israelis wounded. Not clear at this point whether they were soldiers or civilians. But as you mentioned, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is under intense domestic political pressure to do something about the situation in the north. There's about 70,000 Israeli civilians displaced from their homes. There's about 90,000 Lebanese displaced from theirs on the other side of the border. And Netanyahu today saying Israel is prepared to launch a military offensive into southern Lebanon to restore security. That is not something the White House wants to see, given the potential that a war between Israel and Hezbollah could be far larger, far more devastating than the war with Hamas. Gabe.
And Ralph, before I let you go, CIA Director Bill Burns, he's back in the region today. What do we know about those talks?
So he's in Qatar. He's meeting with the Qatari Prime Minister, the head of Egyptian intelligence, and other mediators. And it comes as the administration is on this all-out push, trying to make the ceasefire proposal that President Biden laid out last week into a reality. Now, the U.S. says that this is an Israeli proposal, that it has been accepted by the Israeli government. I can tell you there is fierce pushback from the far right of the Israeli government against this deal. Prime Minister Netanyahu himself has not publicly committed to it, but the White House says that the world needs to be putting pressure on Hamas at this stage to accept the agreement. Gabe.
Raf Sanchez, live for us in Israel. Raf, thank you. And turning now to some news at the Pentagon that broke first here on NBC. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's Chief of Staff, Kelly Magsman, will be stepping down from her position at the end of the month. Magsman came under fire back in January after she failed to inform the White House that Secretary Austin was secretly admitted to the ICU after issues following his prostate cancer surgery. The incident left President Biden in the dark about who was in charge at the Pentagon for 2 days. At the time, the Pentagon blamed the oversight on Magsman having the flu. In his statement, Secretary Austin praised his outgoing Chief of Staff, thanking her for her leadership, counsel, and selfless service. And up next, Donald Trump's search for a running mate is intensifying and perhaps narrowing. We've got new reporting from NBC News on the search and what it could mean for the 2024 race. The panel is next. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Stay with us. And welcome back. As we draw closer to next month's Republican convention, Donald Trump's vice presidential search is intensifying. My NBC News colleagues report that vice presidential contenders recently received vetting materials. And sources tell us right now the search is heavily concentrated on North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum and Senators Marco Rubio, Tim Scott, and J.D. Vance. Sources also tell NBC News that Donald Trump's short list is fluid and includes more than a half dozen names at various times. So joining me now on set is Francesca Chambers, White House correspondent for USA Today, Democratic pollster Cornell Belcher, he's also an NBC News political analyst, and Mark Short, former White House Legislative Affairs Director and former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence. He is also an NBC News contributor. Thank you all so much for joining us. Francesca, I want to start with you. What do you think of the list of VP contenders that I just laid out? Not really a surprise that they're, rising to the top. And as we, our caveat, things could change. The final one that makes this decision is Donald Trump, of course. But what do you make of where this Veep stake stands?
And by the way, none of their teams want to be seen commenting on the record that they're under consideration for vice president. But no, these aren't a surprise. I think when you lay out these folks, you could argue that they each bring something to the ticket for Donald Trump. You have a sitting governor, and he obviously chose a governor last time. You have Marco Rubio, who is someone who could potentially help him with the Hispanic vote. I think that Tim Scott, could make the same argument when it comes to black voters, and Biden's been struggling with both of those two groups as well. And then with J.D. Vance, the evangelical community. So if you're Trump, there's a lot of different things to choose from there. You can disagree if you want. Go ahead, right. Okay?
Mark Short, why don't you win? You seem to have some opinions, sir.
Ohio's a state you want to win, a battleground.
Wow. Actually, I agree with Francesca. I think that those are the four. I think your caveat's very important. It'll be fluid until the very end with President Trump. But I think that those four make sense for different reasons. And part of this, I would have said a couple weeks ago, was honestly he needed the financial help. And so having someone with Burgum's deep pockets made sense. And
that's also something I was going to bring up. How important is money is always important in politics, but for this vice presidential choice, how important is somebody that can bring in that could either give money like Burgum or perhaps somebody like Marco Rubio, who is in the donor class, he would be very well received.
I think that's true, and I guess I just think that the only thing I was taking issue with Francesca is on the evangelical side. I think J.D. Vance is more on the economic nationalist side that I think the rising populist appeal has. But the search is different this time because I think he really needed somebody, 8 years ago to unify the party. That's not his challenge anymore. And in some ways, it's almost like the role is going to be, I think, more of an inconvenience this time around for him.
Historically, you always want someone to sort of balance the ticket and help you where your weakest at, and you've seen that. Historically with presidential picks, I am shocked that that's not a woman in the final round here. I am really shocked.
Well, this is the final round.
Well,
this is maybe not.
What NBC is currently reporting, right. I'm actually shocked that it's not a woman, and particularly when you look at the gender gap that you saw from the last election, which really buried him. And if you look at the continued problem that Republicans have in these subsequent elections around the gender gap, I'm surprised there's not a woman. And also, look. The moderate middle of the electorate. Look, he's going to do fine with the evangelicals on the right and those on the far right. He lost moderate voters by 30 points in 2020. If he doesn't do better in the moderate middle of the electorate, he's going to struggle again.
And Cornell, any of those four names, do they worry Democrats?
No, because in the end, they're the vice president, and we can make a big, a lot of noise about the vice president, but in the end, it's the two guys at the top of the ticket and the two guys at the top of the ticket, and unfortunately, it's two guys at the top of the ticket, and they've got to tell their story.
But the argument about why there wouldn't be a woman on that list is, Nikki Haley. She came out very hard against him in the primary, and I'm just saying, and if you're Trump and you're looking for someone who you want to have loyalty from, that would be an argument. And then, of course, we know why Kristi Noem isn't on that short list right now.
Well, there's that. Mark, I want to turn to you before we go to another topic. You are intimately, you know what goes into this, being on staff for Vice President Mike Pence, and you know about the vetting process here. What do you think is being asked of these candidates right now, and what quality do you think will be most important to Trump? I know we talked about money, but in terms of policy, do you think that weighs at all?
I think less so. I do think that last time it was underreported, but A.B. Culverhouse, who was later ambassador to Australia, really led that vetting process for the Trump campaign, and it was more thorough than people appreciated. But I think it's probably looking really for things that are unknown circumstances. That's really what campaigns don't want, is something that comes out in the press after you've appointed the person. So I think that's the big issue.
Francesca, I want to go to you quickly on something. The Senate held a vote on contraception today. It didn't go anywhere, but do you think that that's part of the Democrats' push ahead in November to really keep the focus on reproductive rights here?
Well, the Biden campaign actually held a call on this today in which they said that President Biden would be bringing this up during the upcoming Democratic debate. So you can expect them to put this really front and center and then tie it into the abortion rights argument to say that, look, now this is left up to the states. You could also see the same thing happen with contraception.
And Cornell, are Democrats, should they be putting all their eggs in the reproductive rights basket? What do you think?
It's shocking. It's shocking. The parties are taking votes that they want the other opposition to take votes on that might hurt them politically. That is shocking. Don't you find that shocking?
Messaging. Yeah, go.
It's crazy. But look, the abortion rights issue is one that has changed the dynamics of politics in this country. And of course, Democrats want to push that issue and make that issue front and center. Look, it's not rocket science. He or she who defines the debate wins the debate. This is what Democrats want much of the debate to be around, just like Republicans want much of the debate to be around, say, immigration. Democrats want much of the debate to be around reproductive rights, and they're pushing that front and center.
Okay, I want to bring up something that has gotten a lot of attention today. A lot of people chattering about it in Washington. Is that article from the Wall Street Journal with a story alleging that President Biden is showing signs of slipping. At least that was the headline. If you read the article, there is some nuance to it, but it is based largely on quotes from Republicans, including Kevin McCarthy. Mark, did you read this piece? What'd you make of it?
I don't think this is going to be a surprise to most voters, honestly, Gabe. I think it's kind of baked in. I think the concern that a lot of voters have, who probably, for a large number of Americans, don't like either option they're given, their concern is perhaps philosophical with Trump, but I think their concern is the feebleness of Joe Biden. And so I think this, in many cases, is kind of factored in already, and I think that most voters can see it.
Francesca, the Biden campaign, actually, White House officials pushed back on this very strongly, very early on.
Well, so did the Biden campaign, and their argument was that the named sources were Republicans largely in the article. But, we were just talking about this in the break before. We've both been in there when the president has confused the names of people. It's usually the names of people or countries. We were talking about the night of the special counsel report in which he mixed up the Mexican president for the Egyptian president. So those are things that are happening. I think the frustration from the Biden campaign, though, is that when the other candidate is someone who has made similar mistakes repeatedly and is constantly on the campaign trail saying things that are baseless, that they feel that the focus on the president on some of these slip-ups is unfair.
And changing gears right now, before we let you all go, I want to play what Donald Trump said yesterday in a phone interview. Let's take a listen.
It's a terrible, terrible path that they're leading us to, and it's very possible that it's going to happen to them. This is a bad, bad road that they're leading us down to as a country, and this is the third world countries.
He wasn't led into those words, Cornell. He started talking about them kind of on his own. Is it bad for his chances if he keeps saying things like that, talking about prosecuting your enemies?
Oh, well, it certainly doesn't help. Right. Again, look, in the end, you got to win moderate voters, right? You're going to have the left and right do what they want. And again, how did Barack Obama win in 2012? He dominated the middle electorate. How did Biden win in 2020? He dominated the middle electorate. That sort of thing, I don't know if it dooms him, but I certainly don't think it helps him with that moderate, middle-of-the-road mom in the suburbs of Philadelphia who's thinking about how she's going to pay bills and pay for college and what's that sorry man of hers doing. You know, that doesn't really speak to her.
Cornell, Mark, Francesca, thank you all so much for joining us. We're out of time, but we really appreciate you being here. And after the break, the Democrats' Senate majority hangs in the balance. We've got election results in some key Senate primaries as Democrats gear up for an uphill battle to keep control of the chamber in November. The top takeaways are straight ahead. You're watching Meet the Press now. Hey, welcome back. If it's Wednesday, somebody voted somewhere yesterday. And the ballot is set in a couple of key Senate races as Democrats fight an uphill battle to keep their majority in November. Any one race could tip the scales. In New Jersey, Congressman Andy Kim is officially the Democratic Senate nominee in the race for the embattled incumbent Bob Menendez's seat. Menendez is gathering signatures for an independent bid, even as he stands trial on federal bribery charges. His son, Democratic Congressman Rob Menendez, survived a primary challenge yesterday. And in Montana, it will be Tim Sheehy as the Republican looking to unseat Democratic Senator Jon Tester. This race could decide the Senate majority and has seen tens of millions of dollars spent on the airwaves already, including at least $2 million from Sheehy himself. Republicans won the state in the 2020 presidential election by 16 points. And joining me now here on set is Jessica Taylor. She's the Senate and Governor's editor for the Cook Political Report. All right, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. Look, the matchup is set now in Montana. This could be the race that decides the Senate majority. What's your big picture outlook here?
Yeah, this is absolutely the most competitive race. As you said, 16 points. And the biggest question to me, listen, if anyone can significantly outrun Joe Biden in that state, it is Jon Tester. They very much feel like, he's had this seat since 2006. He's won competitive races before, but I do think Sheehy is probably the strongest challenger that he's ever faced. But Tester is really emphasizing his Montana roots. He's a dirt farmer, and, he's attacking Sheehy for having, just moved to the state about 10 years ago. But Sheehy has military experience. He's a Purple Heart recipient, a Brown Star winner, and so Tester also is the Veterans Committee chair, though. He's emphasizing his support from veterans, from the military. This is going to be probably the most expensive race Montana has ever seen. We have it in our toss-up column. It is just a very tight race right now, but can Tester, keep up?
And speaking of expensive, I want to put up an ad that the Sheehy campaign released earlier this week. Let's take a look.
It's lawfare, a state-sponsored political persecution led by Joe Biden and the radical left. They want to throw Trump in jail, trying to rob Americans of their choice in the election. And Jon Tester is standing right by their side. Jon Tester supported Joe Biden's witch hunt every step of the way.
Is this the type of ad that we're going to start seeing from Senate Republican hopefuls across the country, basically trying to nationalize their races?
I think if you're in a state like Montana, it makes sense because Trump can only help you. If you're in Ohio, I think we've seen a digital ad from the Republican there, Bernie Moreno, running against Sherrod Brown, a Trump +8 state. If we're going to see it, I'm not seeing it completely yet in some of those closer states, in a Michigan or a Wisconsin or something. That's a little dicier because those are still very close races. But if we continue to see President Biden struggle, and if former President Trump is winning in these races, we certainly could. But I think this was a smart move from Sheehy to do this.
And we were talking about this during the break, but conversely, we saw Maryland Republican Senate hopeful Larry Hogan put out a muted statement respecting the verdict in the Trump trial, and he was met with strong criticism from the Biden campaign. I want to play what RNC co-chair Lara Trump said. Let's listen.
He doesn't deserve the respect of anyone in the Republican Party at this point, and quite frankly, anybody in America, if that's the way you feel. That's very upsetting to hear that.
So are you willing to cede the Senate seat in Maryland to the Democratic Party and not support Larry Hogan?
What I'll tell you is that we, of course, want to win as a party, but that is a shame, and I think he should have thought long and hard before he said that publicly. What I can tell you is that as the Republican Party co-chair, I think he should never have said something like that. I think that's ridiculous.
Jessica, what do you make of this? Should the Trump team have come out so strongly against Hogan? Who does it help?
It did surprise me a little, but honestly, I think this could help Larry Hogan.
Okay.
You know, this is a state that Biden won by 33 points, so more than double the margin that John Tester is trying to outrun Biden by. And if, you know, Hogan has to make this argument, I am a different type of Republican. I will not be lockstep with Trump. Now you have these, you know, Trump co-chairs and supporters coming out and hitting him, and he can say, look, they hate me. But also, I think, you know, more sensible, I think more pragmatic Republicans like Steve Daines, the chair of the NRSC, Mitch McConnell, they understand that, listen, if you want to even be able to put a state like Maryland in play, you have to win with a Larry Hogan type Republican. You can't win with a Trump type Republican.
So in a way, it's a win. It's a win-win for the Trump campaign. Look tough on somebody who is, you know, dissenting, but at the same time, for Larry Hogan, it benefits him.
I wouldn't be surprised to see this in a Hogan ad.
All right, so Sheehy, going back to Montana, she is one of several Republican candidates who are personally wealthy and sinking a lot of money into their races. You know, do you think this is an impact of a shrinking small donor base, you know, across the board?
One of the Republicans' biggest problems the past cycles has been money, because Democrats were able to raise from those small donors. And then even with super PACs coming in, remember that candidates get better ad rates than the super PACs, especially once we get close to November. So this enables them to go up on air and have their message. But I do think it's a double-edged sword because, like you said, Sheehy's being hit for that. Wisconsin, Eric Hovde's hit for his houses in California and things.
Jessica Taylor with the Cook Political Report. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And still to come, D-Day's last living veterans return to the beaches of Normandy 80 years later. Their incredible journey and their message to younger generations is next. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Tomorrow marks 80 years since Allied troops stormed the beaches at Normandy. President Biden landed in France this morning, traveling in honor of the occasion. He's set to visit the American cemeteries near the beaches tomorrow and deliver remarks. The images of that day forever etched in history, when more than 150,000 soldiers from the U.S., UK, France, Canada, Australia, and other Allied nations landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944, turning the tide of World War II in what is still the largest amphibious invasion in military history. NBC's Kelly Kobiella spoke with some of the few remaining D-Day veterans, now more than 100 years old, as they returned to the beaches, some of them for the last time. They shared their memories of that fateful day and their message for younger generations.
A hero's welcome for the men who helped change the course of history. Back on French soil, saluted and celebrated, most returning for the last time. These veterans were young men, some teenagers 8 decades ago, all here on that fateful day.
What do you think, Floyd?
I think it's great. Let's keep going.
Floyd Blair is 103. Dick Rung turns 100 in the fall. He was just 19 on a transport boat taking tanks to shore. Floyd flew above, giving cover.
To me, it looked like every ship and boat in the world was right out there.
The dead bodies were already washing to shore when I got there.
This was to be the longest day.
June 6, 1944, D-Day. The U.S. and its allies stormed the beaches of Normandy, breaking through Nazi defenses, a massive assault that would lead to Allied victory. The number of those still alive to tell the stories of that day disappearing fast. Their average age, now 100. Ed Berthold is back for the first time at 104 years old. On D-Day, he bombed a key bridge in Saint-Lô. It was only his third mission.
Were you scared?
Oh, yeah. As you approach the target, the bombs would be going off around you. I hope I don't have one with my name on it.
Along this 50-mile coastline on D-Day, more than 4,000 Allied troops died in the first 24 hours. Ed wrote home the next day.
Dear Mom, just a few lines to tell you we are all okay. We flew mission number 10 on D-Day.
For so many of these vets, coming back is a chance to revisit the past. Dick Rung kept a journal all those years ago, saving mementos.
What's this?
That's a piece of shrapnel.
like this tiny piece of shrapnel from a German bomb that exploded close to his boat. It's also a chance to honor friends who didn't make it home, remembering the past with a message for younger generations.
I want them to learn to live together. They'll respect their fellow man and quit doing this stupid fighting.
Dick and Floyd say this will be their last trip to these beaches, a place where even 80 years later, they're still remembered as heroes. Kelly Kobiella, NBC News.
And we thank Kelly for that reporting. I'm Gabe Gutierrez, and I'm back tomorrow for more Meet the Press Now. The news continues with Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.